So Andrew called me about a month ago, I believe, and asked me if I would be willing to come preach. And I said, sure, I would love to. And then he said to me, by the way, the reflection for the day is blessed are those who mourn. I figured this would be in your wheelhouse. Thanks, Andrew. I'm going to take you all the way back to 1995. Some of you may remember Oklahoma City and the bombing that happened there. And 4 years later, which at the time felt like an eternity, my high school youth minister decided that it would be a great idea for all of us to Oklahoma City on a youth mission trip. And Oklahoma City had prepared for us to come. We had to work on houses and homes of people who were living in different kind of spaces, or people who might have been elderly in the community, and they wanted these youth to come and connect, to give them space for making their homes restored once again to what they were. And on the last day, they invited us to church together. The church was situated right across the street from the Mourn building that had been exploded. And after church service, we took a little tour. And I remember seeing distinctly, Jesus wept. 2 words, 1 statue, and 1 building that was still gone. And I remember thinking at the time, now I will tell you I was 14, so I remember thinking at the time, I was like, this has been a long time ago that this thing happened. Shouldn't they have built the building back by now? But something about those 2 words stuck with me. And I don't know if you've ever had the experience where you sort of see words or see something and it sticks with you and you have no idea why those words stick with you, but there they are. Jesus wept. Jesus was grieving. In that place, they were noting that Jesus was weeping the loss of life that happened that day in 1995. Now, little did I know what God had in store for me, because I thought I was going to do this wonderful, beautiful thing and go back to Louisiana and be a Christian minister there for the United Methodist Church, of which never happens. Instead, I was brought out to the Pacific Northwest, which brought its own sense of grief. I became a hospital chaplain where I encountered grief daily and actually became an expert on what grief was and what grief is and how grief works and how it integrates into our system. I was thinking about this story today, and I was thinking about Jesus. Now, Jesus knew Lazarus, the known person to Jesus. But sometimes I think grief happens to us not just when we know someone, but it comes to us in all sort of clever and tricky ways. Sometimes we had an idea in our head of how life was going to turn out. And you can hear a lot of this right now with Generation Z, and sometimes the millennials, and even older generations, where you hear them say, this is not what I thought life would be like at this age. That is grief manifested. That is exactly part of the process of grief. And I just want to invite that the world is not where we need it to be right now. And there's a lot of grief. And Jesus was grieving the death of his friend. Now, in 2014, I was invited to become the chaplain of St. Joseph's Medical Center in Tacoma. And one of my assignments there was the mental health unit. But along with that assignment became, you get to teach the grief group. Great, fantastic. And one of the things about that grief group, I would ask everybody, when is the time that you noticed you experienced grief? A small one that you would quantify in your head as insignificant. And people would say things like, well, I had a dog die. Or I got in a car wreck. Not realizing the depth of those connections. See, grief is about attachment. And whenever we experience grief, we are experiencing the loss of whatever attachments that happen in between us and whatever we're seeing. And Jesus had a lot of attachments to humanity. Not just, this is my friend, but understanding the bigger picture in God's plan. So when he heard of Lazarus' death, he was probably feeling grief on some pretty deep levels. He understood not just, oh, this is somebody I know, and I'm feeling sad, but there's a layer of attachment to this that transcends human understanding. And he felt it. I have often thought about the grief process over my years because now I'm a therapist, and guess what shows up in most sessions? Grief. And how people haven't even processed it, how people walk away from it, how people feel like sometimes it sits sideways and they get anxious at certain things, and as we dig, we find grief is present. And I know that as a therapist, the best thing to do for someone who is grieving is just be present. Present to the pain. I'm not going to fix it. I'm not going to make it go away. I'm not going to make it better. After all, you had attachments to whatever it was that you lost. And love and time and kindness and presence are the only thing that are actually going to help you feel anything. You're never going to want to stop missing that person. They're part of your DNA. They're part of who you are. You're never going to stop experiencing the trauma and the grief that comes with trauma. It's going to make you understand how to sit with it differently, how to integrate it into your human presence. As I think about grief, it's one of those things that I think Jesus understood super well, more than most folks. His expectations of what should have been happening in humanity at the time were not happening at the time. In some ways, the human condition continues on. But it leaves us the question, how do we heal? How do we heal from these things? Well, I loved your answer. I don't get over it. We never get over it. We learn how to integrate it into a pattern that our brains can accept, that our hearts can mend from, that our souls can connect to. And I just think about the two models of grief that I've been ad nauseum familiar with. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Anger, denial, bargaining, acceptance, depression. All of those are stages considered the 5 stages of grief. Now, I think where people get it wrong is you participate in a stage and then it goes away, and you participate in a stage and it goes away. It's more like a roller coaster, back and forth and up and down, sideways. Sometimes people come to me and they say, I feel like I'm going, a word that I hate using, crazy. You're not going crazy. You're feeling those feelings that it means to have attachment, and ultimately what it means to love in this world. We are loving people. The blessing is that when we feel pain, we are actually feeling part of our love. A part of our love that we put out into the world. It is actually really dangerous to love. It is not easy. Because part of the consequences of love is grief. Part of the natural life cycle. And so when we're thinking about the other example and other theory that I've become accustomed to is William Mourn. If you've never heard of William Mourn, he developed the task of grieving. And I actually prefer it because it gives people something to hold on to when they're feeling lost. And William Mourn says the last stage, the last task, rather, of grieving is reestablishing an enduring connection to the loss. Jesus knew what it was like to reestablish love, to reestablish that memory. So it's not as painful, it may still be painful, but it's integrated into our understanding of how to be compassionate to each other and how to love one another. So we find our blessing. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who have loved and have taken a risk in love and feel the grief. And blessed are those who grieve with us. And blessed are those who have community to grieve with. And blessed are those who mourn. Would you pray with me? Holy God, as we come to this place today, we know that there have been so many stated griefs. We've known that mourning and bereavement have taken place in our own lives. And that your love has held us in that space through people, through presence, and through time. And I ask that on this day, you pour out love on this community and give them a sense of peace. I ask all these things in your Son's name. Amen.